Concerned what it hit for, cause I've still come to raise hell like Mephisto. Please don't front, cause I'll karate chop your lymph node. Noodle arm punk, you punch and end up with your wrist.
So no introduction is really needed. Roman Reigns made a statement. CM Punk wasn't as good or as over as John Cena. He didn't move the needle like The Rock, to something to that degree. He made this in a conversation with Ariel Helwani. The moment it came down like a goddamn comet, and it just wrecked everything. Now we have to discuss it, because look, there really isn't much to discuss, okay? But the Smark tears are flowing, dog. They're flowing. I mean, it's Hurricane Katrina when it comes to Smark tears. You know, it's bad. It's flooding New Orleans. It's bad. So let's get right to it. Going to the WWE on BT Sport comment section. This would be all the people from England, right? BT Sport is England, right? Punk moved the needle more than Roman. Punk in 2011 literally was the reason why me and so many other people started watching wrestling again. And yet they still never pushed him as hard as they did Roman for the past 7 years. And somebody responded, go check the numbers, bro. They were at an all-time low when he was on top. For starters, here's the thing. When a lot of people talk about CM Punk, they talk about how they personally feel. Well, me and my buddies, when we were kids, we really liked CM Punk. It's like, yes, yeah, I'm sure you did. You know, CM Punk he was not bad. He wasn't terrible. But look at what Roman said. He doesn't move units like The Rock. He wasn't as over as John Cena. When you look at CM Punk's best matches, his best moments when he was most over, when he was going against John Cena. I mean, I don't see how you have to be in the bubble to even think otherwise. Okay. Let's see what somebody else says. He says, I get the company directive right now would be to bury guys like Punk and Bryan, but man, they don't know how bad it looks to do that. Just further positions and confirms they are the bad guys. There are good guys and bad guys? There are good guys and bad guys? Who are the... This is stupid. For starters, Roman didn't bury Daniel Bryan. He didn't say anything about Daniel Bryan. He did mention that he beat Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania. I listened to that whole interview. He mentioned that he beat Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania, but that was it. He didn't bury Daniel Bryan. He didn't say anything negative about Daniel Bryan. He just said that CM Punk is bitter, which is true. And that CM Punk wasn't as over or as good as John Cena and The Rock. Both of those things are true. What is the debate? What is the debate? What is there to debate on this subject? You know, I don't know. It says, looks bad. Y'all nerds claim to love competition and bust nuts when AEW takes shots at WWE. But if anyone there ever returns one, y'all cry and say they look bad for doing it. He says, this isn't a shot at AEW. It's a shot at Punk, and it missed by a mile. Only nerds in this situation are the ones who are going to pretend CM Punk wasn't important at all. He didn't say he wasn't important. That was not his point. His point was he was not as over as John Cena or The Rock, or as good. And earlier in the interview, I'm not sure if it was earlier or later, Roman Reigns made the point that in the business, it's all about moving. It's all about tickets. He said that's what his dad told him. And because Ariel Helwani asked him the question about whether he felt like WWE was protecting him and all that kind of stuff, which was a silly question because, I mean, look at how many NYEs didn't make it in WWE. You know, so no, he wasn't really protected because he was an NYE. There's a lot of NYEs that didn't work out. His brother being one of them. Rosie. You know, Umaga being another one. It didn't work out. They had Samu Jr. that was there. He was in Legacy, remember? He made like 2 appearances. He didn't work out. They had Sean Maluda under contract. Didn't work out. You know, Samu. Didn't work out. Samu is the son of Alpha, I believe it is. Didn't work out. He was the tag team partner of Rikishi in the Head Shrinkers. You know, there's a lot of NYEs that didn't make it. So trying to be like, oh, it's family. It's like, nah. I'm pretty sure it helped. It helped for sure, but no. Also, when people get defensive about this CM Punk thing, they have to realize CM Punk buried Roman Reigns, and actually is the reason Roman had such a tough time getting over. Okay, that was that whole, make Roman strong. They forced Roman on us. All that stuff he did in that shoot interview with Colt Cabana, that was completely unnecessary and completely unprofessional, that people gobbled up and loved anyway, even though he buried the young guys. Yeah. So whatever Roman Reigns has to say about CM Punk is perfectly okay with me. All right? Perfectly okay with me. I don't give a damn. He could say he can bury the guy all day if he wants to. He earned it. He should be like, fuck Phil forever, because you made my job harder than it needed to be. Let's see. John Cena's only 5-star match was against CM Punk. Oh, well. Whoa! That's a burn. Dave Meltzer gave... Wow. Let's see. Relax, Roman. This is from Elite AEW. Elite AEW. Wait a minute. There was a hashtag on Twitter the other day. AEW sexuals. Do y'all remember that? Did y'all see that? Because I was going to do a video on that. I decided not to because it's tribalist nonsense. But then I started to see that people started to embrace it. This AEW sexual thing is really weird. It's really, really weird. But let's go to what this guy said. Relax, Roman. Only took you 8 years to finally hit your stride. Punk was so relevant. Every week, your own audience was been chanting his name for 7 years. I wonder if Reigns matches with Cena and Rock will even touch Punk versus Cena or Punk versus Rock. The build with Cena has been lackluster. I agree with the latter part. I agree that the Roman-Cena feud has been lackluster, but it's one of those things that writes itself. The Cena-Rock feud was also lackluster in build. I didn't like the build to that either. I wish people would stop saying, well, they chanted for CM Punk. Like, sure they did. Sure they did. They used to chant woo, 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 too. Well, when they had Zack Ryder on the screen, was they making sure to watch him? They were buying his merchandise. It says, Punk was reminded multiple times for one match to make Roman look strong. When it was a handicap match versus All of the Shield. Yes. When he was going to lose in a handicap match. He says, I know y'all not in the comments arguing that CM Punk was or is as big as Rock or Cena. When did stating facts become divisive? When you don't like the facts. When you're not a fan of those facts, they become divisive. He said, maybe CM Punk just needed 40 nicknames, 100 t-shirts, 2 stables, and a mouthpiece. 8 years of continuous main event pushes. In complete disregard to fan reaction, a new set of teeth, and 37 minutes of screen time every episode, and he will be as cool as you, Roman. Maybe Roman got all that stuff because he's cool. You do know that CM Punk was in 2 stables, right? CM Punk was in 2 stables. You do realize that CM Punk, when he was given the World Heavyweight title, it was a big moment for that moment. But then he was pushed all the way down the card. He was lower on the card than guys who didn't even have the belt. When he won the first title. What was that, 2009? I think it was. He had been grinding for 3 years at that point. A lot of people seem to think that CM Punk was one of those guys that kind of came out of the bushes. It's like they tried to make CM Punk a world champion or a world beater for 2 or 3 years before he finally broke through. And then what he had to do to break through was break the 4th wall. Which, if anybody could break the 4th wall, pretty much everybody would be over. Somebody says, the glorious tears. Yes, sir. Oh, so, okay. I mean, he moved the needle more than Roman, at least. Reigns is the worst drawing champion in WWE history. This is absolutely incorrect. This is absolutely incorrect. Let's say you wanted to say that the issue is TV ratings. So I know this is going to come up. It's very weird that Nick Khan did an interview with some magazine. Oh, not magazine, but Recode Media. And this is what he had to say about TV ratings. And this is hopefully should shut up people who talk about TV ratings, but of course it won't. He says, I think you've seen it in primetime scripted television. When you and I were kids, and Archie Bunker did a 15 rating and made significant amounts of money at that time for Norman Lear and the studio and everyone behind it. Now you're seeing shows in prime time that do a 1 in the demo, where significant dollars are paid for that. So 1 of 15, and again, the 15 million was the overall audience, but even less of that 1 out of 15 of the audience was 30 years ago, still commanding top dollar. I'm not sure that you've seen a mechanism come across for advertisers yet that is as effective as television. And putting the streaming component in there on the ad-supported tiers, it feels like it's going to be around at a high level for a long time. So he's saying that having good ratings today, being a #1 show or whatever the case may be, is still high performing. It's a different time. Second, when the $1 billion people who are giving WWE $1 billion say they want you on your brand, you're a draw. So that's kind of how it is. But they don't consider AEW competition. Remember that. He didn't mention AEW once, which is absolutely true. It's absolutely true. He didn't mention AEW at all. He said, how many people ever moved the needle like The Rock? Well, a couple. I could think of a few. In the modern era, not many. Corporate shield doesn't make for a good interview. He's not being a corporate shield. He's talking about himself. And he's also talking about CM Punk, who buried him again, making personal comments, buried him specifically. I don't want to have to go through and read what he said about Roman Reigns, but Roman Reigns is completely 100% correct. Let's see. So CM Punk's mentioned here. His match with Lesnar was just uploaded to WWE's YouTube. Cena referencing Punk on SmackDown. Imagine if he returned after Roman wins instead of at Rampage. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Hasn't viewers drastically gone down since 2016, since Roman has been the face? And somebody says 2.5 million for SmackDown on Friday. AEW will never get close to that, even with Punk and Bryan. I don't know, man. I don't care about TV ratings. I just want people to be accurate in their assessment of people's talent and abilities and stuff like that. You know, I get so tired of seeing people say that Kenny Omega is a draw, and then I go and I look at, you know, I just bypass the TV, the people who talk about ratings, and you see Kenny Omega wrestled on Impact, and then you say Impact draws lowest rating, and it's like it's happened 3 times in these 6-man tags they keep putting them in, and the following day I just see Impact draws lowest rating, Impact draws lowest rating. You just be like, okay, look, I don't go on here and argue that stuff. I just say it is what it is, you know. What draws is not really even the people. Like, you have to get over to a certain position before you can really draw on your own. You need a good story and a good plan in order to be a really big draw. And when that story and that plan is over, typically people move on to the next big thing that has a great big story or plan. So, you know, there's a lot of energy behind stories and plans. People get excited about things, but then once they get it, it's over, right? Somebody says, I like this was tackled head on. Nice to see a performer from there acknowledging the other wrestlers and giving an honest answer. Hey, BT Sport, any chance of you guys picking up AEW too, or is it WWE exclusive? The ITV deal is a dumpster fire. I'm pretty sure it's exclusive. Let's see. Somebody said, this is a bad faith answer. Cena is coming in to put over Roman in what is essentially a 7-year massive company push. A push fans dislike for various reasons. He has no room to talk about CM Punk or anyone else. Well, here's the thing. Sure, you could say a 7-year company push, even though Cena, I think he lost to Roman before. That was less than 7 years ago. That was quite a while back. Second, they did the whole thing with Jeff Hardy and CM Punk to get him over. Remember that? That's kind of what legends do. They come in to put people over. I don't understand, like this, there's this conception, I think it's created by CM Punk, that he was some underdog put upon by WWE, right? It's this victim mentality. They didn't want to see me succeed. It's like, why the fuck they give you the Money in the Bank twice? They give you the world title 2 or 3 times. They had you wrestle The Undertaker in pay-per-views. You wrestled, Jeff Hardy on pay-per-view. All this before 2011, by the way. They gave him his own faction. The straight edge savior. He had a great run to Rey Mysterio. They didn't want you to be a top guy. That's bullshit. And it's almost like, I don't know, man. There's people drinking the Kool-Aid. Let's see. It says, want to talk about moving the needle? Wait till tomorrow if CM Punk debuts on AEW. Then he'll see how much the needle moves. He had one of the best promos ever. He held the title for 400 plus days. CM Punk was more over than Reigns will ever be. I can tell you that it was torture with CM Punk being champion for 400 days. That was torture. And there was a reason he was in the mid card. Let's see. And here comes the WWE machine trying to turn their audience against CM Punk and how they didn't really want him in the first place. Sad now that he's with AEW. Nobody's trying to... He's talking about CM Punk being bitter and tossing shit out there to ruin him and douse, all kinds of negativity. CM Punk was the one that started doing all this negative shit. Now it's coming back out. And yes, it's coming back out as his name is buzzing because people are asking about him, people are talking about him. But there's a personal thing between Roman and Punk. And, Punk has continuously done stuff. Like he's continuously buried The Miz. Like his whole jealousy over The Miz, and that's really what the weird thing is. That CM Punk is angry that he will never be as loved as other people. It's jealousy, man. Says CM Punk became the hottest act in WWE in years despite the company actively working against him. See, this is what I mean, right? The company was actively working against CM Punk. Where does that narrative come from? They gave him he won the Money in the Bank at WrestleMania. He cashed in the Money in the Bank. They gave him the world title. He didn't draw. It didn't work. And then they did it, and then they doubled down the next year and they did it again. They did it again the next year. It's not like he only had one shot, man. It's like, man, come on. Get the fuck out of here. It said Roman Reigns seems to resent CM Punk because of those gotta make Roman look strong comments. Did kind of to have a big part in the fans rejecting the guy for years for being, quote, the corporate chosen one. Yes, absolutely. It said dude booked with a rocket up his ass since day one. He's been given every chance imaginable. Granted, I think he's a great performer, but CM Punk had to overcome booking the entire way. Roman is good, but Punk's heel work with Heyman, my God. This is weird. See, again, man, these people who believe that CM Punk was some poor, put upon, held down. He wasn't allowed to be great. He wasn't allowed to be great. 400 days of being a world champion. That was after the promo. So Mick Foley, CM Punk was damn good and damn over. With one interview, he changed the course of the wrestling business. He had great matches with a wide variety of opponents on a nightly basis. When he returns to the ring, he will once again be damn good and damn over. Okay. With one promo. And how long did it last? How long did it last? It lasted till he lost. He lost one match and all of a sudden, get the hell out of here. Come on, Foley. Foley's just a nice guy. Foley's going to take up for everybody. So, I take that. Let's see. CM Punk and his fan base are a cancer to the business and he ruined WWE. It's time to talk about it. Oh, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't say that he was a cancer to the business. I wouldn't go that far. I will say that a lot of his fans are absolutely Jim Jones drinking the Kool-Aid in the middle of Guyana, ready to commit suicide over him. He has stands like Sasha Banks has stands. And a lot of his stands, to be quite honest, are people in the wrestling media. And I definitely have a problem with that. I definitely have a problem with that. But I'm not going to go into it. It says he was fired on his wedding day, too. He quit months before that. So, who cares? You see, lots of marks are talking about Roman Reigns, saying CM Punk wasn't as good as The Rock or John Cena. My dudes, that's a fact. If those dudes wrestled one more time, it would draw more money than CM Punk drew in his career. There are stars and then there's mega stars. Cena and Rock are mega stars. Yes, and Roman said that multiple times in this very interview that they didn't listen to. That there are levels to this thing, and that he's trying to get up to that level. He didn't even put himself in the position of being a bigger star than Rock and Cena. He says, so a guy that didn't get over in like 5 years of being shoehorned into the main event after main event, and only ever got over after surviving leukemia and crowd disappearing in a pandemic, thinks CM Punk wasn't that good, despite getting over everywhere he's wrestled. Okay. All right. I don't think him having leukemia had anything to do with that. I don't think it had anything to do with that. Look, you want to talk about getting over. Well, they're talking about crowd reaction. All the crowds are going to be different, right? Crowds are going to be, if you go watch, what was this, Royal Rumble 2014, where everybody was behind Roman because they hated Batista, right? Everybody wanted Roman to win. He lost. What about that episode of Raw from Philadelphia where Roman won the title back from Sheamus? It was 100%. That's Philadelphia. That had nothing to do with his leukemia. He was... This is ridiculous. These people can't be misremembering. Like, I misremember things. I forget stuff. I'm shooting from the hip 90% of the time, 99% of the time. I don't really read that many articles. I don't really stay on top of everything. Sometimes I try to do things from memory. But I'm not going to misremember the super push that, CM Punk got. Now, was it as sustained as Roman? No. But he got pushed pretty strong and pretty regularly for 2 or 3 years. Even before that, because he was this ECW champion too. Yeah. That was in 2006. Oh, was it 7? Was it 6? I think it was 7 or 6. And a lot of CM Punk's popularity came from, he's an ROH guy, so we want to see our independent favorite wrestler. Let's see. This motherfucker just said, like he didn't need CM Punk to go lay down for him. Reigns is the only a name because of his bloodline made you. See, that's why I said that before. About the whole Anawai's and all the Anawai's that washed out of WWE. It's necessary. Let's see, tomorrow Rampage, literally the downfall of AEW. Oh no, that's not going to happen. They wouldn't be teasing it if it's not going to happen. I don't think they would be teasing it this heavy if it wasn't going to happen. It's the whole CM Punk on Rampage thing. I think they would have put a kibosh on it a long time ago if it wasn't going to happen. And it would have been smart for them to do so. Let's see, people want to disagree with him, fine, but he sees the business from an insider's perspective at the very top of the mountain, not sitting on a couch yelling at a TV. Ooh, that's very true. That's very, very true. I appreciate that. Okay, let's transfer over to the wrestling websites, because I know people are going to have feelings. All right, so let's jump over to Wrestling Inc., which has a pretty good comment section. There's almost always some good comedy to be had here. Let's see. I see only the truth here. Punk was over, but he didn't go mainstream like Cena and sell out stadiums. Cena and Roman, that's true. Cena and Roman really out here trying to get attention for their match by name-dropping Punk and Moxley on TV and in interviews. He was asked about John Moxley, by the way. Okay. Cena was just doing Cena. Roman can say Punk doesn't move the needle all he wants, but way more people are talking about that than SummerSlam. That's false, by the way. All the wrestling media is talking about CM Punk. The wrestling media is talking about CM Punk. People think the wrestling media is the only media. And that's why I say that's one of my many problems with the wrestling media being marks. Okay? That's a huge thing about them being marks. Because they're talking about this great build-up for this great pop in one city for one wrestler and not a storyline. Look, I'm not going to get into it. And see, the entire arena chants for CM Punk all over the country while he still gets out of the wrestling business. Let's see what your legacy is. Mr. Needed wins over multiple Hall of Famers and legends and sabotaging various wrestlers just to validate himself, and still got booed when he was the biggest face of the company. You are good, but you deluded yourself. You couldn't get booed or cheered on your own, while CM Punk was getting slapped by women during his heel SES run. I guess that's Straight Edge Savior. And entire arenas were chanting his name during his face run. You should be humble and hope something rubs off to you. But alas, Undertaker, Brock Lesnar, and John Cena have tried, but you still need Paul Heyman and Usos to get a manufactured Thunderdome heat. You do realize, by the way, gentlemen, CM Punk wrestled The Undertaker. CM Punk wrestled Jeff Hardy. CM Punk, and this is before 2011, right? He wrestled both of those guys before 2011. They were really trying to put CM Punk over. And then afterwards, of course, he wrestled Triple H, and he wrestled the Wyatt family and all those kind of things too. Legends come in to work with undercard guys. I mean, it's what they do. It says Punk and Bryan were hovering above 3 million mark in ratings. When Punk became WWE champ for over 1 year, the ratings started to decline quite a lot. They fell below the 3 million mark. Ooh. Roman saying this about Punk is the same as Punk saying this about Cena, which he never did. Roman's tune would be different if he received the golden shovel treatment at SummerSlam. But he can say this because it's not going to happen. I like the kayfabe promo, though. It might be kayfabe. I think it got a lot more people talking because it's Roman that said it. Says the guy who got to beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania, wrestled Brock multiple times at major pay-per-views, got paraded by Rock, and still got booed. His whole career, he's been spoon-fed wins against legends and part-timers. Countless legends took backseat, had their spot pulled for getting better reaction than this guy. Never had an athlete needed so many talents to get over or even be talked about as a main eventer and still failing to draw and get desired response. The whole country booed this guy when he was supposed to be the biggest babyface in the company. Hell, even WWE sabotaged natural babyface reactions for Dean Ambrose so they can have him as their mascot. Bruh, you are good, but don't talk crap about others when your plates are dirty. Again, CM Punk wrestled Brock Lesnar. He lost, but he wrestled Brock Lesnar. Roman lost to Brock Lesnar too. And some people say that deranged him. Derailed, I should say. And then a lot of people seem to think that Roman's booking was perfect. Remember Suffering Succotash? Remember that shit? There was a lot of stuff that was going on with Roman. And he got popped for, I think it was steroids. So he got, he had to eat shit for a little while too because he got popped with steroids, got suspended. CM Punk didn't have to do anything about that. Somebody said mean words about CM Punk. Triple H said he was skinny fat and didn't like him. So that's a burial, I guess. See, when Punk was champion, the ratings continued to decline and he was hardly ever in the main event. Sure. Punk is nowhere near Cena. Absolutely nowhere near. Cena was over. He sold tickets, merch, and drew in viewers. Punk's reign as champ was one of the worst in TV viewership for that period. Oof, I don't know. I don't want to get into that. See, somebody said, in the entire history of pro wrestling or sports entertainment, very few wrestlers can arguably make the claim about moving the needle. Stars like Hogan and Stone Cold Steve Austin don't come around every day. Nevertheless, CM Punk's in-ring return will certainly generate some interest. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Oh, who let this reasonable person in? Somebody closed the door to reasonable people. Okay, if Punk was not over and didn't move the needle, doesn't that make Roman worse than Punk? I just checked when Punk was champion and the rating used to be 3.8 to 4.1. Meanwhile, under Reigns' regime, the ratings are in a constant all-time decline. Plus, before the pandemic, they were doing poor house show numbers. Yes, I'm glad somebody responded to this by saying that was 10 years ago and comparing it is pointless. Again, when you talk about, that's like saying they just put the belt on Juventud Guerrero because the cruiserweights in WCW Nitro were getting high ratings. It's like compared to today, sure. It says, what does that say about all top wrestlers today and all companies then? It says that nobody is a draw, which is the truth. I know wrestling fans seem to think that, you know, all top guys everywhere draw money. Like, no, they don't. Some guys just do slightly better than other people, you know? Sometimes a guy might, like Ring of Honor is a good example. Impact is another one. You might not increase business by that much. You might just maintain business. And for a lot of wrestling companies, that's how their champions are. That's why they can do the You Deserve It title runs, right? And they could just put randos in the main event. Because it's like the business isn't going to go down if you put the belt on this guy. Business might not go up, but it ain't going to go down if you put the belt on them. So put the belt on them. So what? In WWE, they're looking at it kind of like, all right, if we can't go up, we'll maintain. But they're certainly, you know, very, very rarely are they going to do the experiment of putting the belt on somebody, expecting the ratings and stuff to go up. They may put the belt on somebody for a different reason. Like Jinder Mahal. They put the belt on him so they could parade him around India, you know. And there's a lot of reasons why that didn't work out. Number one being he was a heel. And that was something I read from actual Indian wrestling fans. That, you know, people were like, you know, you said that they wanted Jinder Mahal to be our guy, but he's a heel. Like, he's doing stuff that we don't like too. I'm like, well, that makes sense, right? You know, if he should have been a big Indian babyface. Says Punk shows up in AEW, he's going to light Reigns and Cena up. He says, how? On the mic? Certainly not in any ratings metric. Oh, they better hope that ratings go up. They better hope ratings go up. They really do. They better hope ratings go up. It says, he is correct, but CM Punk is more over 7 years gone than in every current top star in pro wrestling today. This is false. He is only over towards people who really, really want him back, and most people don't care that much. Out of sight, out of mind for a lot of people. And AEW is absolutely positively trying to get people to watch Rampage by actually giving USA Network money, and Fox too, to advertise on WWE TV. Even TNA did do that. TNA did that too. All right, so let's finish this video up by going through cage side seats. And to be quite honest, this Vox-powered cesspool of trash, I couldn't even... I usually want to skip straight to the to the comment section. We have to deal with the author of this thing. Kane A. Knight. Roman Reigns, CM Punk was not as good or as over as he thought he was. So let's go straight to his summary. He goes through the article. He says, quote, Roman's insult on Punk doesn't land well because there are very few wrestlers in history who have ever been as successful as The Rock or Cena. That includes Roman, who is not as over as Cena or The Rock, and never moved the needle like either of them. Roman is the top guy right now primarily because Cena finally moved on to a new career away from the ring. The bottom line is that Punk was better than Reigns on the mic and in the ring. He was more over than Roman Reigns has ever been in WWE. And this is based on what exactly? The fact that he was hot for a year? Roman Reigns has been the top merchandise mover for how many years? This is a weird situation. These people are caping for... I mean, Jesus Christ. Didn't I say it was like Jim Jones in Guyana? I'm serious, man. The cult of personality is real. Listen to the lyrics to that song. And then see how people who act to see him about CM Punk, look at how they behave. I'm telling you, he called his shot when it comes to that cult of personality thing. These people worship CM Punk. There's no way the average Joe thinks CM Punk is a bigger star than Roman Reigns. There's no way. It's just not, it's not even logical. Okay? There's a reason CM Punk never main evented WrestleMania and Roman Reigns did. And what do you mean because Cena finally moved on? Then Brock took his place. Brock Lesnar returned and took his place. And it didn't have to be Roman, by the way. You know, they had other options. So, this is ridiculous. You can say, well, Punk was in a position where, John Cena was still virtually in his prime. People weren't really tired of him yet, even though it had been 6 years by that point. People weren't kind of tired of him. It's kind of like if Bret Hart had won the world title and Hulk Hogan never left. That's kind of how it is when you talk about Cena and Punk, right? Like, Bret Hart was very popular, of course. Absolutely. He wasn't no Hogan, though. He wasn't no Hogan. That's absolutely true. And then you could say, well, Roman Reigns is like, what was they saying? He was like Diesel before, right? He was like Diesel. I'm like, nah. He's not like Diesel at all. He's not like Diesel at all. Diesel couldn't have pulled this off. Diesel could have. In '96 when Diesel was turning heel, we'll talk about that some other time. But no. And just because you want to say Punk is more over in terms of people chanting his name, which of course that people think that's what you mean by you're over, because people chant your name. No, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Okay, let's go into the comment section. Wait a minute. He continues his article. I'm sorry, I thought that was the end. He says, also worth pointing out that Punk main evented multiple SummerSlam events and several other pay-per-view cards against Cena. What Roman is doing this weekend is old hat for Punk, because he was a mainstay at the top level in WWE in 2011 through the end of his career there. This ain't Roman Reigns' first main event. Roman Reigns main evented multiple WrestleManias already. One thing CM Punk left and then bitched about. He says, quote, CM Punk didn't leave WWE due to concerns that he was falling down the card. Punk was scheduled to take on Triple H at WrestleMania 30. Punk's top spot in the promotion was very secure at the time he left the company. Then why did he quit? Why did he quit? If his top spot was very secure, why did he quit? Why did he also complain about wrestling Undertaker? Which Roman Reigns actually did. Why was he complaining about the spots if he was very secure? He was so totally secure. Because he wasn't getting what he wanted. Then he continues. Reigns' stance seems to be that part-timers coming in WWE is a good thing and helps everyone. And ultimately, up to each individual wrestler to take and secure their own spot. The latter part is a privileged point of view. Oh boy, I told you. Vox cesspool. The latter part is a privileged point of view, not all that different from what former top guy Cena has said in the past about today's stars in WWE. And it's really easy to say from someone who is anointed by Vince McMahon as the guy, well before he ever demonstrated the skills to be that guy. Again, trying to say that, oh, he's just in a spot because of the position. Again, how many times do I have to say this? What did they do for Punk? What did they do for Punk? They gave him the Money in the Bank 2 years in a row. Now, the first run was on Raw. Was he a bigger star than anybody on that show? No. Was he a believable opponent for anybody on that show? No. No. Second year, it was a little bit more believable because he was wrestling Jeff Hardy. Okay? A little bit more believable. Then they gave him like Undertaker and stuff like that, and things changed again. He simply was not ready. And then when he was ready, he got the push. Just like when Roman was ready, he got the push. Again, Roman has been through the whole United States title, Intercontinental title, won the Royal Rumble, but lost the title match and all that kind of stuff. He's been there. This ain't been an easy road. These people seem to think it has been. And yes, part-timers, strategically used part-timers, are good for the business. And they've always been used. There's always been part-timers on the card. And it increases business. And people usually do better. Over time, of course. If you say, well, no part-timers, so I guess they shouldn't have Hogan versus Rock at WrestleMania 18 then. Because I don't think Hogan was wrestling full-time at that point, was he? I don't think so. This is ridiculous. It says there are positives and negatives with part-timers coming in and taking up top spots on the biggest wrestling events of the year. Reigns seems to understand that, but undermines his own point by needlessly taking a shot at CM Punk that isn't helpful to his argument. I don't think he cares about this position. These people are so sensitive. So let's see what the comment section is saying. When it comes to how good someone is at wrestling, man, I don't even know what to say to that. Everyone defines what is good wrestler differently. Sure, I agree with that statement. If Reigns doesn't think Punk was as good as Cena, cool. I disagree, but I'm not mad at it. It's totally subjective opinion. And as far as how big of a star Punk was, sure, if you stack Punk up next to the truly transcendent stars, he falls short. But how many people are really on that list? Gorgeous George, Andre, Hogan, Flair, Austin, Rock, and Cena. That's about it, in my opinion. I'm willing to hear arguments for guys like Randy Savage and The Undertaker being on that list, but there aren't any more than that. Punk belongs in the next category, people who were huge stars in wrestling but didn't transcend it to become true cultural icons. That's a hell of a spot to wind up in, and I don't think it makes sense to say that's not good enough. When CM Punk is competing with real estate with people who are cultural icons, and then he leaves and he starts bitching about not being in the main event over them, then yes, this argument makes perfect sense for Roman to make. This isn't, CM Punk making the argument while AJ Styles is in the main event. Okay, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about CM Punk, who specifically wanted, when he lost the title to The Rock, he bitched about it. He complained about it. He was mad about it. That led The Rock to scorching him on Twitter about it. This is what he's talking about. CM Punk is bitter because he want make it a triple threat match or something. I remember that. Remember the whole shoot interview? I remember it. Make it a triple threat match or something. You don't belong in the ring with them. That's what they're saying. You don't belong here. We can shoehorn you in here if I guess. But this is grown folks' business. You don't belong here. You don't squeeze Chris Jericho in the middle of The Rock and Hulk Hogan. You don't do that. I don't give a fuck if he got the belt. Get the fuck out of the way, midget. Okay? Beat it. And I love Chris Jericho. But he ain't on that level. He ain't there. You don't get to fuck up the money. You ain't in that spot. And you can say, well, what spot is CM Punk in? CM Punk is like I said, he's like Bret Hart. Bret Hart was huge. In Canada, he's a cultural icon. He's huge in Europe. CM Punk has a slightly smaller fan base than Bret Hart. Okay? I think if you were to compare it, only because CM Punk is still actually culturally relevant, due to the fact that he's still able to work. If Bret Hart had been able to wrestle in 2002 or 2003, I think we'd be talking about Bret Hart a lot differently. But unfortunately, the cookie didn't crumble that way. If Bret was able to take some years off after Montreal and come back 5 years later, oh man. When Vince was able to wrestle and been able to take that beating properly, oh, it would have been huge. Bret, Vince, that would have been huge. Oh, I didn't talk myself into this. Let's see. Cena's just the biggest star of this century, and no one comes close. He's some distance off the biggest stars pre-2000. Okay. He's far behind Hogan, Austin, and Rock, to be sure. I don't know that he's far behind many others. I doubt Vince would have kept him on top so long if he wasn't drawing. Because Cena was drawing. He was on the same show with Cena. Okay? That's what people keep forgetting. Roman has to try to carry the show. He got Seth Rollins. He had Bray Wyatt for a while. Then Bray Wyatt fell off. They ended up firing him. Even though he had moved to a different brand. They had a little bit more star power back when Punk was, because Cena was a regular. Now Cena is a part-timer. So that knife cuts both ways. Let's see. Mainly if we're talking about all time and all over the world, but a lot of these names are lost to history. Definitely behind Bruno and Andre. and arguably savage if we just limit it to WWE history. He's far beyond. He's far below Randy Savage. CM Punk compared to Randy Savage? That's ridiculous. Ugh. Let's see. He says, great way to get heat on his character. Of course, he probably opened the door to CM Punk chants during his match. A match, mind you, everyone will sit through. The boos will get after, he'll get after winning. Chef's kiss. Okay. I guess so. It says, as good as Rock or Cena. In ring, Punk is better. Promos at least level with them. Over is kind of iffy. Rock was insanely over. Cena always gets a reaction one way or the other. Both are more ingrained mainstream. Reigns isn't totally off base here, but he is clearly trying to diminish the moment like a good company man would. Not a big deal here. What diminish what moment? Diminish what moment? CM Punk is returning, assuming he returns, to Chicago, his hometown. Did you see the reaction that Britt Baker got in Pittsburgh in her hometown? Does it really matter? Do you think that all of a sudden Chicago is going to be like, oh man, he's not over as Rock and Cena. We might as well save our cheers. Fuck. Stop being a dumbass. He says, somebody says, Punk is overrated. Honestly, what attracts people at the end of the day is just his whining. I was never really impressed with his in-ring work, and from even what's been posted by people who have met him in person, he acts like he got a chip on his shoulder, because he does. I know many disagree with me, and I respect that, but in my mind, he was mediocre at best. Ooh. Ooh. That's stiff work. He working stiff. It says, somebody says, Punk is slightly overrated because how he left, but mediocre he was not. He was a legit top guy. Sure, his title reign was overshadowed by Rock and Cena, but he was doing some amazing work towards the end. I think his heel turn, where he basically just turned his complaints into a character, when he was hanging out with Paul Heyman, that was really good. When they broke up, him and Heyman, he had to turn babyface again, and I was okay with that, but I don't know. I like that stretch of time between 2011 and 2013. I think he was solid then. My personal favorite CM Punk is the Straight Edge Savior. I really love that. I think he could have did more with that, but then he ran into that awful mountain of human trash known as The Big Show. Let's see. Somebody says, oh, well, the comment section got cut off because I tried to load more comments and it got cut off. But the comment section is actually more sensible than I thought it would be. Comment section is far more sensible than I thought it would be. The writer seems to be a salty bastard. But forget it, because it's taking forever to load up. But I think I've said enough. Tell me what you guys think in the comment section below. Like, share, sponsor, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for your time, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Tell me what's worse than learning all that you led to believe was all horse crap. They distort, so question as if you worship.